holiday of remembrance. So she registered for TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, and spent the weekend with hundreds of other grieving military families. There was a lot of KIAs, Colleen said, referring to those killed in action, but that was not how Colleen's husband had died, and it made her feel more alone. It was like, oh, your husband died of an illness. She's no longer alone. TAPS membership rolls are growing, but not because of combat deaths. In the last 5 years, it has reported a 51% increase in the number of families grieving a service member who died due to illness or cancer. The spike led the organization to make a tragic projection. By 2020, the top killer driving military families to join TAPS won't be suicide, it will be cancers or other illnesses. TAPS has reported more than, switch the page, 10,000 service member deaths due to illness since 2007, based on the families who are on its membership rolls. In total, 85,000 families of fallen service members have joined the organization since it launched in 1994. The trend just really started to escalate, TAPS President Bonnie Carroll said. Then we actually started seeing entire units who were affected. During its annual Memorial Day conference on Sunday, TAPS and several other veterans organizations will launch an effort to begin to capture the full extent of the problem, beginning with its first ever panel on understanding toxic exposure in the military. They will discuss illnesses tied to overseas wars and domestic living conditions. The Defense Department has been building a database that could help, called the Individual Long Exposure Record, which is scheduled to be online as of October 1st and accessible to VA doctors and Defense Department researchers. Individual service members, however, will have to file Freedom of Information Act requests to access their own records. The veterans groups will also push for increased access to those records, Frona Barger said, to enable military personnel and their doctors to more quickly conclude. You know, your cough might be more than a cough.
The Pentagon on Thursday presented proposals to the White House to send military reinforcements to the Middle East to beef up defenses against Iran amid heightened tensions in the region. President Donald Trump, speaking to reporters before meeting with Pentagon officials, said he was not convinced that the troops were needed, but would do whatever was necessary. We'll see what happens with Iran, Trump said. I don't think we're going to need them. I really don't. I would certainly send troops if we did need them. Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan told reporters that the Defense Department has not yet determined how many troops might be sent to reinforce the existing U.S. military presence in the region. He disputed reports by the Associated Press and others that the Pentagon was proposing to send up to 10,000 more troops to the Middle East. He said reports citing specific figures were not correct, but he would not say whether the numbers under consideration were higher or lower. What we're focused on right now is, do we have the right force protection in the Middle East, Shanahan said, referring to defensive forces. It may involve sending additional troops. He said he was in regular contact with Marine General Kenneth F. McKenzie and Central Command Chief about how to shape the U.S. presence in the Middle East with potential Iranian threats in mind. Officials said the proposed troop reinforcements are not a response to any new threat from Iran, but are aimed at strengthening security for the U.S. forces already in the region. They said that the troops would be defensive forces and that the discussions include additional Patriot missile batteries, more ships, and increased efforts to monitor Iran. Any move to deploy more forces to the Middle East would signal a shift for Trump, who has repeatedly emphasized the need to reduce America's troop presence in the region. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said on Fox and Friends Thursday, Trump was evaluating the force posture in the region every day, evaluating the risks and making sure we have it right. U.S. officials have provided few details about possible Iranian threats, but indicated that they initially involved missiles loaded onto small Iranian boats. This week, officials said the missiles had been taken off the boats near Iran's shore, but that other maritime threats continue. Sending more troops could also raise questions on Capitol Hill. During back-to-back closed briefings for the House and Senate Tuesday, defense leaders told congressional officials the U.S. does not want to go to war with Iran and wants to de-escalate the situation. Pompeo and Shanahan also told lawmakers that the U.S. is seeking to detour, not provoke, Iran, even while accusing Tehran of threatening U.S. interests in the Mideast. Shanahan told reporters, "Our biggest focus at this point is to prevent Iranian miscalculation."
Assange faces new 18-count indictment. From Washington, in a case with significant First Amendment implications, the U.S. filed new charges Thursday against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, accusing him of violating the Espionage Act by publishing secret documents containing the names of confidential military and diplomatic sources. The Justice Department's 18-count superseding indictment alleges that Assange directed former Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning in one of the largest compromises of classified information in U.S. history. It says the WikiLeaks founder, currently in custody in London, published documents that harmed the U.S. and its allies and aided its adversaries. The case raised fear among news media advocates that Assange's actions, including soliciting and publishing classified information, are indistinguishable from what traditional journalists do on a daily basis. Those concerns led the Obama administration Justice Department to balk at bringing charges for similar conduct. Assange's lawyer, Barry Pollock, said the unprecedented charges against his client imperil all journalists in their endeavor to inform the public. The Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press and the American Civil Liberties Union were also critical of the U.S. decision.
Wildfires raged in Israel on Thursday amid a major heat wave, with police ordering the evacuation of several communities in the country's center and south. Firefighters battled brush fires along the Gaza boundary, as well as near the country's main international airport and outside Jerusalem. And a major highway between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem was closed because of the fire. The region is being gripped by a major heat wave, with temperatures in Israel reaching 100 degrees and higher. And a police official told Hebrew media that a fire had almost completely destroyed the village of Mevo Modim, a community founded by the late songwriting rabbi Shlomo Carlebach. While police said emergency services had no immediate indication of the cause of the fires, the blaze broke out a day after Israelis marked the Jewish festival of Lag BaOmer with bonfires. A Netanyahu spokesman blamed incendiary balloons launched by Hamas for fires near the Gaza Strip, but that was not immediately verified by emergency services. Gaza militants floated at least 10 incendiary balloons into Israel Wednesday, and in response, Israeli authorities reduced Gaza's fishing zone from 15 nautical miles to 10.
Storm outbreak leaves 3 dead in Missouri. From Jefferson City, Missouri. An outbreak of nasty storms spawned tornadoes that razed homes, flattened trees, and tossed cars across a dealership lot, injuring about 24 people in Missouri's capital city and killing at least 3 others elsewhere in the state. The National Weather Service confirmed that a large and destructive twister moved over Jefferson City shortly before midnight Wednesday. The tornado cut a path about 3 miles long and a mile wide, said Police Lieutenant David Williams. Emergency workers reported about 24 injuries and around 100 people went to shelters. There were no immediate reports of any deaths or missing people in the capital city. The 3 deaths happened more than 150 miles away near Golden City in Missouri's southwestern corner. Kenneth Harris, 86, and his 83-year-old wife, Opal, were found dead about 200 yards from their home, and Betty Berg, 56, was killed, and her husband, Mark, seriously injured when their mobile home was destroyed, authorities said. A tornado also skipped through the town of Eldon, about 30 miles outside Jefferson City, where it caused damage but only 1 reported injury. A twister also caused damage and several injuries in Carl Junction on the 8th anniversary of the catastrophic tornado that killed 161 people in nearby Joplin.
The House has approved a bill to promote retirement security by making it easier for companies to offer retirement plans. The bill, approved 417 to 3, also makes it easier for workers to transfer retirement plans when they change jobs and allows part-time workers to save for retirement. It also fixes a provision of the 2017 tax cut law that raised taxes on benefits received by family members of deceased military veterans. Representative Richard Neal, a Democrat from Massachusetts, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, said the bipartisan bill makes significant progress in fixing our nation's retirement crisis and helping workers of all ages save for their futures. The bill now goes to the Senate.
And some short news briefs from around the country. Big city growth begins to slow. Big cities in the U.S. aren't growing like they used to. Most of the nation's largest cities last year grew by a fraction of the numbers they did earlier in the decade, according to population and housing unit estimates released Thursday by the U.S. Census Bureau. The previous growth big cities had experienced in the first half of the decade was fueled by millennials who delayed home buying in the suburbs after the recession and stuck it out in large cities, said William Frey, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution's Metropolitan Policy Program. The recession's aftermath stranded a lot of millennials in cities rather than their moving off to the suburbs, Frey said. The census data released Thursday looked at changes in cities and towns from mid-2017 to mid-2018. The data don't reflect changes in metropolitan areas comprising multiple cities, towns, suburbs, and counties. The weakening in growth appears to have started 2 years ago and accelerated last year. And briefly, Facebook. Facebook removed more than 3 billion fake accounts from October to March, twice as many as the previous 6 months, the company said Thursday. Nearly all of them were caught before they had a chance to become active users of the social network. And from Washington, plunging ahead despite paralyzing partisanship in the nation's capital, senior lawmakers on both parties Thursday proposed legislation to tackle surprise medical bills and other concerns, from prescription drug costs to uneven vaccination rights. And in the Taliban, John Walker Lind, the Californian who took up arms for the Taliban and was captured by U.S. forces in Afghanistan in 2001, got out of prison Thursday after more than 17 years. Released under tight restrictions that reflected government fears, he still harbors radical views. From the Russian probe, a banker who prosecutors say tried to buy himself a senior post in President Donald Trump's administration by making risky loans to former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, pleaded not guilty Thursday to a financial institution bribery charge, as his lawyer said he's done nothing wrong. Stephen M. Koch, 54, was released on $5 million bail after making a brief appearance in Manhattan federal court. And finally, the European Union, pro-European Dutch parties were predicted Thursday to win most of the country's seats in the European Parliament, with right-wing populist opponents of the European Union managing to take only 4 of the nation's 26 seats.
And moving on now to local news. A controversial proposal to build a courthouse annex and a new, smaller juvenile detention center in downtown Omaha took a big leap forward Thursday with a bond issue vote, but a bumpy road may still lie ahead. The Omaha-Douglas Public Building Commission voted 3-2 Thursday to issue a $114 million bond for the project, reversing a January vote against funding it. The vote came after more than 2 hours of public testimony Thursday, most of it from people opposed to the detention center. This has been kind of an arduous process, but it actually has given us a better product, Claire Dudas said. We still need City Council approval, but I feel confident about that. Duda voted yes Thursday, along with fellow Douglas County Board member Mike Boyle and Public Building Commission Chairman John Christensen. The 2 Omaha City Council members on the commission, Amy Melton and Brinker Harding, voted no. The project, planned for 17th and Harney Streets at the MUD headquarters site, calls for erecting an 8-story tower to house Douglas County Juvenile Court, plus the county attorneys and public defenders' offices and community programs. It also would renovate MUD's office building into space for juvenile and family services and erect a 4-story juvenile detention center with space for 64 youths. The City Council will have a say in whether the complex is actually built. The County and Building Commission cannot move ahead unless the Council approves changes to an agreement between the City of Omaha, Douglas County, and the Building Commission. The Council could be asked to vote in June. It's unclear how the Council will vote and what position Mayor Gene Stothert will take. There also has been talk at City Hall that people may file legal challenges against funding it through the Building Commission and using a nonprofit corporation to develop it. This is not over, Douglas County Board member Jim Kavanaugh said. He has led opposition to the Downtown Juvenile Detention Center part of the project and the funding and development process. Kavanaugh has pushed for building the courthouse annex, but for renovating juvenile detention centers at 42nd and Poppleton Avenue instead of building a new one downtown. Boyle cast the swing vote Thursday. After originally supporting the project, he became an opponent. But in recent weeks, Boyle changed his mind again. He said Thursday that he has come to believe the Downtown Justice Center complex will be best for Douglas County children and families. He said that more programming for alternatives to detention and diversion, including mental health treatment, has been emerging and that more is on the way. Boyle said he still doesn't like putting the new detention center downtown, but said, in life, you can't always get what you want. He added that having a detention center downtown would mean that youths would no longer have to be put in shackles and driven from 42nd Street to go to court, which Boyle says is a traumatizing experience. These are children, Boyle said. We should support them. Harding said everyone on the commission shares the common goal of helping youths become productive members of the community, but have different ways of getting there. He said the county should first develop programs, then see what kind of building they need. Melton sounded a similar vote, while opponents, including the Omaha Police Union, have said 64 beds is too few when the current juvenile detention center has an average daily population of 75 to 80, Melton said. The county might need fewer if it is successful in developing programs and processes that reduce youth detentions further. She said Ramsey County, Minnesota, home to St. Paul, only has about 25 youths in its detention center.
Lincoln Street's targeted for repairs. City crews aim to rehab 300 blocks of Lincoln's residential streets annually once the new sales tax revenues earmarked for street repairs begin rolling in, Mayor Lyrian Gaylor Baird and city transportation officials said Thursday. Public meetings in each quadrant of the city over the next 2 months will help an oversight committee and transportation officials prioritize first-year projects expected to be announced in October. Gaylor Baird told reporters at her first news conference. During the first 2 years, the majority of resources will be directed to residential areas, and we will make street improvements in every quadrant of the city, she said. The quarter-cent sales tax collections begin in October and are projected to generate $13 million annually that city transportation officials say will help the department tackle 3 times as many projects as the current budget allows. Nearly 2 of every 3 city streets need repair work, like patching and street sealing. About 3 of every 10 need rehabilitation work, where crews grind down the street and add new pavement on top, and just over 1 in every 10 street needs replaced. One challenge is just making sure people can move through our city with ease and comfort in the midst of construction, and we know that that's a challenge anytime we're doing road repairs, the mayor said. Because of the ballot language, at least a quarter of all the sales tax money must be put toward new non-residential street construction, and at least 1.5% must be set aside for planned improvements at 33rd Street and Cornhusker Highway. The first bids on street projects tied to the sales tax revenue will be in December, with the first work starting in the spring of 2020, according to a timeline released Thursday. The new mayor said she's already reached out to some residents and groups about members serving on the Advisory Committee on Transportation. She hopes to announce members of the Oversight Committee, which could be around a dozen people, next month. She wants to have neighborhoods well represented on the committee and also have input from public school representatives.
Sewage treatment plant doing its business again after the flood. Dried corn stalks on a debris-crumbled fence and an administration building ripped to the studs hint at what happened here 2 months ago. So does the faint, musty odor of flood-soaked ground at the 260-acre Papillion Creek wastewater treatment plant in Sarpy County. The City of Omaha's plant, which cleans sewage from about 2/3 of the metro area, was knocked offline March 15th by historic flooding. On May 16th, the plant resumed full treatment. That includes removing toilet paper, flushable wipes, and other debris that don't dissolve, along with treating number 1 and number 2. To those who saw what the plant looked like on March 15th, including plant manager Dave Sikora, it's a minor miracle that the plant is already back in business. I thought it would take 3 to 5 months of work to get us back to where we were, he said. It's hard to explain how bad it was. Damage was so severe, about $35 million worth, that it forced the Public Works Department to shut down the plant and pump raw sewage into the Missouri River for 33 days. The longest the plant had released sewage directly into the river previously was 3 days after a tornado damaged the plant in 2017. Here's what the plant's 33 workers encountered in mid-March. Half of the plant's 30 buildings were inundated by 2 to 3 feet of flood water. The systems that deliver electricity to the pumps and controls that help the plant break down waste were underwater. The command center that hosts the servers that automate much of the plant flooded. The administration building next door flooded as well. About a mile of tunnels that connect the plant's buildings and carry many of the pipes and fiber optic cables that tie it to the outside world were full of water. Human waste coated much of the plant, requiring hazardous waste crews to clean up the mess before repairs could even start. The road to the plant also flooded. The first crews to visit the plant after it was abandoned had to get permission to drive over a levee to reach it. When the waters pulled back over the next 2 weeks, crews confronted mountains of debris, including corn stalks, propane tanks, telephone poles, and pieces of roadway. Recovery was a 24/7 operation for up to 300 people for more than a month, including outside crews from HDR Inc., Erickson Construction, and others. Some public works employees did not get a day off after the flood until mid-April, said Jim Thieler, the department's assistant director who oversees the plant. The department has not had time yet to calculate the hours crews work to reclaim the plant. One reason for the long hours? Much of the plant's equipment is being operated manually until new cables and computers can be installed. You figure out real quickly how much work automation saves, Sikora said. About half of the plant remains under construction. The administration building and operations center still need to be finished. The equipment with temporary fixes need to be replaced. The department expects to finish that work in the next 6 to 8 months. The final tab and who pays won't be known for some time. The Federal Emergency Management Agency typically pays 75% of the public damage claims. The state picks up about 12.5%, and the city and its private insurer picks up the rest. Workers are running the plant in construction trailers on the property. They're putting in a new fence to slow down looting. But off the east end of the property, you can still see the remnants of the flood. Water on once dry land that looks like the nearby Papillion Creek. The plant is protected by the same levees as Offutt Air Force Base, which also faced massive flooding back in March. But the plant is on lower ground to allow gravity to bring sewage to its way. It sits along the east end of the Papio Creek, where it flows from the Missouri River. Improvements to the levee system will be vital, officials say.
In Nebraska legislative news, tax incentives showdown looms. One more showdown. With the 2019 legislature's days dwindling down to a precious few, senators appeared on course toward one final major confrontation with an element of payback hanging in the air. A much amended proposal to enact a comprehensive new business tax incentive program is on the agenda on Friday, following close on the heels of Wednesday's defeat of the last major property tax relief proposal left standing after 80 legislative days in session. Some rural senators had made it clear that the fate of one was tied to the other before Albion Senator Tom Breezy's effort to provide $112 million in additional property tax relief fell 10 votes short of the 33 required to end a filibuster and immediately vanished from the agenda. On Friday, the tax incentives package, LB 720, will need 33 votes of its own to avoid a similar fate. Senator Mark Coulterman of Seward, sponsor of the proposal, said Thursday he believes it can clear that barrier, but he's also prepared another amendment to the bill to secure support after a series of changes that were designed to meet legislative objections and concerns. One of the remaining concerns expressed during the floor debate was a need to provide a cap on the total tax incentives that are granted to businesses that locate or expand in Nebraska. Breezy made his intentions clear immediately after his proposal, LB 183, disappeared on Wednesday night, when he said he'd find it very problematic to support corporate giveaways after turning our backs on working Nebraskans, namely farmers and homeowners. Senator Carl Friesen of Henderson echoed that sentiment on Thursday. In all my years here, we've been trying to find out how do we provide property tax relief. That's the biggest challenge. The governor says we can't raise taxes, Friesen said, and that shuts off the new revenue needed to fund property tax relief. So the only avenue is growth, he said, and if we give that money away in tax incentives, there is no growth. Coulterman said he believes he can hold the necessary 33 votes together. We're going to make it, but it's going to be very close, he said. I think we get it done. Coulterman said supporters of the proposal really have listened to both sides of the aisle in making a series of adjustments to the bill, and he noted he was there with rural senators voting in support of Breezy's bill and an earlier Revenue Committee package. "You work with each other," he said. "They can't blame me. I voted with them all the way." Coulterman said he purposely held back action on his tax incentive bill to give agriculture an opportunity to achieve property tax relief, first through the tax reform proposal authored by the Revenue Committee, before Breezy offered his proposal to fund additional property tax relief with revenue raised by eliminating 24 sales tax exemptions. A comprehensive committee proposal to fund a substantial property tax reduction with $372 million in new revenue was trapped at the first stage of floor consideration by a filibuster and disappeared from the agenda. Breezy's own plan ultimately fell 10 votes short of breaking through a filibuster at the second round of floor debate. The business tax incentive bill advanced from first stage consideration on a 29-5 vote, with 15 senators declining to vote on the measure. Not voting were 9 urban senators and 6 rural lawmakers.
Dr. Patrick LaRochelle was just about to leave the hospital where he was working in the Democratic Republic of Congo for the day when he decided to make a quick check on a patient. She was pregnant, but the baby had died in her womb. Her oxygen levels were low. He had worn gloves when treating almost every patient since an Ebola outbreak began in the Central African nation in August, but he did not put them on before he grabbed his stethoscope and listened to the woman's heart and lungs that day in December. "I'm not sure what made me step back and reevaluate the situation," LaRochelle said Thursday at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. "But after about 30 seconds, I thought, I need to figure out where this woman is coming from." He later found out that she had come from a village experiencing an outbreak. The woman died about 2 hours later. LaRochelle learned the next morning that she had tested positive for Ebola. On December 29th, LaRochelle arrived in Omaha, where he completed the last 14 days of a 21-day monitoring period in a secure area at the Nebraska Medical Center, home of one of the few dedicated biocontainment units in the United States. LaRochelle did not develop the disease and was released January 12th. His name was not made public at that time. He spoke publicly in Omaha about his experiences as part of the 3-day National Summit on Pandemic Preparedness held by the nation's state courts. Hosted by Nebraska Chief Justice Michael Hvac, the summit brought together state court officials from 25 states and 3 U.S. territories, as well as health officials and others, to discuss ways the court system would address a pandemic, should one arise. Courts might have to figure out how to keep functioning in a pandemic, particularly if staff shrank because of illness or people bailed on jury duty. Public health issues can also make their way into the court system. The recent measles outbreak in the U.S., for instance, has raised a number of legal questions. Last month, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio mandated measles vaccinations in one neighborhood in response to an outbreak there. One New York county banned non-vaccinated children from public indoor places, an order rescinded later after legal challenges by some parents. Nebraska court officials recently completed a guidebook known as a bench book to help court officials in case of pandemic or other public health emergencies. While the summit had been planned for about a year, it comes as the Ebola outbreak in Congo continues. The number of cases in the outbreak stood at 1,877 on Thursday. At the medical center in Omaha, Dr. LaRochelle's room had been stocked with snacks and drinks, and the photos of his wife had been framed for him. Staff members brought gifts of food and drink, including Omaha barbecue and craft beer. They even brought in exercise equipment. "I was incredibly well taken care of," he said. UNMC and clinical partner Nebraska Medicine, as well as 2 other health centers, are tasked with training hospitals and healthcare workers across the U.S. to respond to Ebola.
Abortion info bill goes to final reading. Senator Joni Albrecht's bill that would guide women on where to get information if they changed their minds halfway through a medical abortion made it to second round of debate Thursday and another filibuster. The bill, LB 209, would have doctors inform women who are starting a medication abortion that they can seek information from a State Department of Health and Human Services website to find immediate medical assistance if they want to stop the abortion after taking the first drug, mifepristone. Albrecht said she has received more email on this bill than any other in the 3 years she has served, almost all of it positive. The legislature advanced the bill to final reading on a 36-9 vote. Senators also adopted an amendment introduced by Senator Carol Blood of Bellevue that a woman could be cited for public indecency, a Class 2 misdemeanor for breastfeeding in public. State law already allows women to breastfeed in public or private area where she is otherwise authorized to be. But if someone would complain, she would apparently be cited for public indecency. Blood said a lot of public shaming is done and negative comments are made on social media about women seen breastfeeding in public. That amendment was adopted on a 43-3 vote. During debate on the bill, Omaha Senator Ernie Chambers introduced and withdrew an amendment that would change wording in the bill from unborn child to fetus. Since senators have been told by supporters of the bill that it deals with scientific material, Chambers said, then we may as well use scientific accurate biological terminology. He would also have changed wording in the bill from carrying a child to carrying a pregnancy to term. Since we know that this bill is merely a piece of propaganda, Chambers said, that it's the first link in a long chain which those who support it hope they can fashion. They're not concerned about any use of language. They're not concerned about being accurate. They want to make it as onerous a process as they can for a woman to obtain an abortion and for a physician to perform one. Albrecht said she would not support the change because she liked the current wording used in the bill. Lincoln Senator Patty Pansing Brooks argued that a lot of people who want to restrict abortion also offer no help to women once the baby is born. The way we pick and choose and graze through the salad bar of morality and ethics in this body is just astounding to me, she said. How many votes have you made to help take care of the poor people in our state? Lincoln Senator Suzanne Geist said during debate she knows the perception of many people who are not religious is that people of faith are judgmental and hate-filled. I would just submit to you that my experience has been completely opposite of that, Geist said. Hopefully my life is evidence that it's opposite of that. I have great compassion for women who have made this very difficult decision. She is not pointing a finger at women who choose abortion, she said, but to say there is hope, there is a different choice. And if you choose that different choice, we want to make that evidently clear to you, she said. The bill is expected to come up for final reading sometime next week.
A 29-year-old man threatened to shoot his 16-year-old girl's family if she did not get in his truck. The trafficker then coerced her into having sex with strangers. Chad Miller, an investigator with the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, met the teen after she had been repeatedly reported missing by her adopted family. Only after her trafficker had been arrested did she share her story with Miller. Miller said the sex trafficking story was typical. In fact, he sees dozens of these a year. Miller told the teen's story to roughly 65 people, many of them tattoo artists, who gathered at the old mattress factory on Thursday to learn about how the sex trade and tattoo industry intersect. The goal was to educate tattoo artists on steps they can take to combat sex trafficking. The University of Nebraska Medical Center College of Public Health, Black Squirrel Tattoo, and the Douglas County Sheriff's Office partnered to put on the event. Shireen Rajaram, a public health professional and human trafficking researcher with UNMC, said one of the things that we hear from the women and from law enforcement is that women often are branded with tattoos as a way of showing ownership and control. Rajaram said tattoo artists have a critical opportunity to detect and report abuse. This is something we hear from survivors. They say, look, why did you guys do nothing? We were out in the community. You didn't say anything. You didn't notice anything, she said. Miller said 70 to 80% of trafficking victims have tattoos. The barcode, that is one that is being used, Miller said. What you're looking for a lot is their street name, tattoo inside the bottom lip, property of, pay me. Miller said tattoos across thighs and references to money are also common. Both Miller and Rajaram suggested that tattoo artists call 911 if they suspect a client is being trafficked or abused. Rajaram also suggested that business owners post flyers in the restrooms with the resources for the victims, such as the National Human Trafficking Hotline.
Lincoln assault being viewed as a hate crime. The Lincoln Police Department is investigating an assault in southwest Lincoln on Wednesday night that investigators believe to be a hate crime. The victim, an 18-year-old woman, was walking near South Coddington Avenue and West A Street just after 8 p.m. when two white men approached her, according to Lincoln Police Chief Jeff Blymeister. They made derogatory comments and threats before knocking her on the ground and kicking her. The victim sustained cuts to her forearms and both sides of her face, as well as bruising to her lower leg. She later sought treatment at a nearby hospital. Bleimeister said the contents of the threats initiated procedures for investigating and processing hate crime reports. Hate crimes are considered to be motivated by prejudice on the basis of race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender, or gender identity. Social media reports indicated that the teen is Muslim. In response to those reports, the Council on American Islamic Relations, the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization, offered a $1,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible. Bleimeister did not confirm whether the teen is Muslim. The two men have not been identified and were seen by the victim just after 8 p.m. at South 17th Street and West Rose Street. One had a bicycle and the other had a skateboard. Our community, our agency, will not tolerate hate crimes, Bleimeister said at a Thursday morning briefing. Police are working to identify the two men through video recordings, canvassing the area, and examining digital evidence. Anyone with information about the incidents is encouraged to call police at 402-441-6000 or submit an anonymous tip to Lincoln Crime Stoppers at 402-475-3600.
It's been 25 years since Columbus Park Community Center opened on the site of a former city auto tow lot. Subby Anzaldo was interim mayor then, and his name was emblazoned on the plaque that still hangs inside the neighborhood gathering spot that, at the time, was the first city-designed community center to be built since the 1970s. On Thursday, Anzaldo paid another visit to 1515 South 24th Street. This time, the community center was dedicated in honor of the longtime councilman who pushed for its construction and whose public service spans decades. He was a huge factor in getting this done for South Omaha, said City Parks and Recreation Director Brooke Bench. We just felt this was fitting. Mayor Gene Stothert, former Mayor Hal Dobb, Councilman Vinnie Palermo and Ben Gray, and a few hundred more of Anzaldo's friends and family members were on hand for the unveiling of the sign on the community center that also bears an image of Anzaldo when he was an interim mayor. Anzaldo, diagnosed last June with glioblastoma, an aggressive cancer that begins in the brain, sat outside next to his wife Jan and thanked the mayor and other supporters who gathered as children played just yards away at the park's playground. He said in an interview that the Columbus Center, blocks from the house where he and Jan raised their 5 kids, is a source of pride for him, his former constituents, and his family. It will continue to be that in the future when they drive along 24th Street, Anzaldo said. Now 85, Anzaldo was recognized not only for his role with the community center, but also for his lengthy record in public service that ranged from being on the Parks and Recreation Board to advising the Dobb administration. He represented District 3 on the City Council from 1988 to 2000, stepping up for a part of what at the time was interim mayor when another mayor resigned. Anzaldo's roots as a theatrical booking agent also were highlighted as musicians attended and sax players George Neela and drummer Joe Voda entertained before the formalities. A grandfather of 20 and great-grandfather of 16, Anzaldo on Thursday recognized his family's enduring support, cracked jokes, and said his Sicilian parents who came to this country would be proud to know their name will live on in South Omaha.
Cabins Point releases rise again. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is increasing water releases at Gavin Point's dam because of the heavy rainfall in the past week. Releases were set to increase to 60,000 cubic feet per second, up from 50,000 CFS. John Remus, chief of the Corps' Missouri River Basin Water Management Division, said there's no estimate on when releases will return to normal levels. Because of the rain, which totaled 2 to 5 inches in some areas, inflows into Gavins Point, as well as South Dakota reservoirs upriver at Oahe, Big Bend, and Port Randall have increased, taking up more space in the reservoir's flood control pools. Releases from Gavins Point, near Yankton, South Dakota, will allow more water to pass through the Missouri River reservoir system and slow the rise in the other reservoirs. Mountain snowpack continues to melt and enter the system in Montana and North Dakota, Remus said, and the Corps must ensure that reservoirs have enough room to hold that runoff. The heightened releases follow flooding in March, stemming in part from record Missouri River flows. Runoff in March in the basin above Sioux City was 11 million acre-feet, which surpassed the previous record of 7.3 million acre-feet in 1952. The average March runoff is 2.9 million acre-feet. The floodwaters breached or topped dozens of levees in Iowa, Nebraska, Missouri, and Kansas, damaging Offutt Air Force Base and closing interstates and highways. Flood warnings continue along the Missouri River south of Blair, with the river still above flood stage south of Plattsmouth.
A mall security guard has been arrested on suspicion of making terroristic threats after allegedly threatening to shoot at suspected shoplifters fleeing in a vehicle. The wild chase began, police say, with a small group shoplifting Wednesday night at Oakview Mall. It ended with a Douglas County Sheriff's deputy firing at the shoplifter's vehicle, possibly because he felt threatened by it. Omaha police provided this account. A small group, 3 or 4 people, stole items from a department store at Oakview Mall on Wednesday. As they left the area in a minivan, a 26-year-old mall security officer who was off duty, William Buttka Gray, attempted to stop them. Buttka Gray was in street clothes. Buttka Gray followed them in an SUV and at one point in the chase yelled at them to stop or I'll shoot you. The occupants of the minivan believed Buttka Gray had a gun and were afraid they would be shot. As Buttka Gray in his SUV was pursuing the shoplifter's minivan, an off-duty Douglas County Sheriff's deputy happened upon the chase. The deputy called 911 to report a white SUV attempting to run a teal minivan off the road. The deputy's call was made at 10:16 p.m. from West Center Road near 144th Street. Omaha police got the call, began to respond to a moving disturbance. The vehicles continued through southwest Omaha before the incident came to a head in the general area of 156th between Q and S Streets. There, the minivan slowed enough to let 3 passengers out to run away. The witness said the minivan accelerated towards a man later identified as off-duty deputy. At that point, the off-duty deputy yelled at the minivan to stop. It did not and continued forward, over the median and toward S Street. The deputy fired his gun at the minivan. Now, there's no indication that the minivan's driver was struck by the rounds, according to police. According to dispatch reports, the deputy put out a help an officer call and shots fired, and that prompted a swift response from law officers around the entire metro area. Omaha police set up a perimeter in the general area and were able to apprehend the 3 males who ran from the vehicle, an adult and 2 youths. Also responding to the scene were Douglas County Sheriff's deputies and Nebraska State Patrol officers. Officers also eventually found the minivan and the driver, also a male. Omaha police and the Nebraska State Patrol are investigating the incident. The name of the deputy was not released Thursday evening, nor was there any information on the people in the van and whether they'll face any charges, including the shoplifting. Buttka Gray was booked on 3 counts of making terroristic threats. Investigators did not find a gun on Buttka Gray or in his vehicle, and neither Oakview Mall nor Buttka Gray could be reached for comment Thursday evening.
Sentencing bill moves forward. The Judiciary Committee advanced a bill Thursday to the full legislature that would change sentencing rules to affect prison overcrowding. It also sent out a bill, LB 238, on an 8-0 vote that would require the 2 members of the legislature witness any execution from the time the condemned prisoner enters the execution chamber to the time he or she is pronounced dead or the execution is halted. During that time, no one would be allowed to obstruct the view of any of the witness to the execution process. During the execution of Carrie Dean Moore last summer, the first administration of the death penalty in Nebraska in 20 years, witnesses were shielded from viewing 14 minutes of the process. Death penalty observers said it hindered transparency and true reporting of the effects of the drugs. With the end of the session looming, the bill's advance Thursday would not be debated until next year, but could be addressed early in the 2020 session. They have no priority designation at this time. Both were introduced by Lincoln Senator Patty Pansing Brooks. Proposed as the 1/3 rule sentencing bill, LB 131, it would allow release of a prisoner in 1/2 of the original term imposed by the court, if adopted and amended, as amended by the committee Thursday.
Moving on now to our obituaries. Badura, Sandra Susan Badura, age 74, died May 15th in Kingwood, Texas. There will be no formal service, just a visitation time for remembrance on Saturday, May 25th at Kingwood Funeral Home. Christopher Bergstrom, died May 10th. He was 20 years old. No services are scheduled. Marlene Bolita, age 77, passed away May 14th. Visitation will be Tuesday, May 28th from 5 to 7 p.m. at Bethany Funeral Home with vigil service at 7. Mass of Christian burial will be Wednesday, May 29th at 11 a.m. at St. Bernadette Catholic Church. Interment will be at the Omaha National Cemetery. In lieu of flowers, memorials may be directed to St. Bernadette School. Dalka, Mark E. Dalka, passed away May 20th. Services will be today at 10:30 at West Center Chapel. A graveside service will be at 2:30 p.m. today at Lincoln Memorial Park in Lincoln. De Autremont, Estella Bernice de Autremont, age 85, passed away May 22nd. Visitation with family will be Sunday at 6:30 p.m. with recitation of the Rosary to begin at 7 p.m. Funeral Mass will be Monday at 10 a.m. all at Mary Our Queen Church. Family and friends are all invited for a luncheon that will immediately follow the service at the church social hall. The family will direct memorials. Dirks. Diane L. Dirks passed away May 22nd. She was 56 years old. A complete notice will be made later. Grabenschroer. Lydia Rose Grabenschroer, age 23, passed away May 18th. The family will receive friends Friday, May 24th from 4 to 7 p.m. at West Center Chapel with a wake service at 7 p.m. Mass of Christian burial will be Saturday, May 25th at 10 a.m. at St. Thomas More Catholic Church. Grasso. James T. Grasso, age 25, passed away May 22nd. A complete notice will come later. Hefner. Stuart Lee Hefner passed away May 21st. He was 57. A mass of Christian burial is taking place this morning. Hayes. Mildred Hayes, age 89, passed away May 3rd. No services are scheduled. Good Shepherd Funeral Home will be handling arrangements. Henderson. Mary E. Henderson, age 87, passed away May 11th. No services, and Good Shepherd Funeral Home will be handling arrangements. Loftus, Andrew Loftus, passed away May 18th. He was 44. A celebration of Andrew's life will be held Saturday, May 25th at 11 a.m., with family receiving friends 1 hour prior to the service, all at Bremen Mortuary. In lieu of flowers, memorials given to the family will go towards lung cancer awareness and research. McGuire, Mary Jo McGuire, age 92, passed away May 20th. Mass of Christian burial will be held today at 10 a.m., or was today at 10 a.m., at St. Joseph Catholic Church of Wisner in lieu of flowers, memorials to the Catholic Relief Services. Miller, Lorna F. Miller, age 86, passed away May 18th. A memorial service will be held at 11 o'clock at John A. Gentleman Mortuary's Pacific Street Chapel today. Miller, Thomas Miller, age 51, passed away May 9th. Memorial service will be held Sunday, June the 2nd at 3 p.m. at Overture Center in Madison, Wisconsin. In lieu of flowers, memorial donations in memory of Tom can be made to the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Murphy, Jennifer L. Murphy, age 37, passed away May 19th. Visitation will be Saturday, May 25th at Bethany Funeral Home. In lieu of flowers, memorials requested to the family. Quist, Marge Quist, 90, passed away on May 22nd. A complete notice will follow. Sheehan, Jerry E. Sheehan, age 81, passed away May 20th. A celebration of life will be held May 26th at 1:30 p.m. at the Cass County Fairgrounds in Weeping Water, Nebraska. Visitation will be Saturday the 25th from 1 to 9 p.m. with the family greeting friends from 6 to 8, all at the funeral home. In lieu of flowers, donations to the Manley Park Fund. Sanja, Gary Sanja, age 72, passed away May 22nd. A complete notice will follow. Serber, William Bill Serber, age 75, passed away April 9th. A memorial will be held in Omaha this summer. Svoboda, there we go, Svoboda. Adolph J. Roy Svoboda, passed away May 21st. He was 76. No services are scheduled. Ray, Fred A. Ray, passed away May 22nd. He was 91. There will be a private service. Youngberg, Nancy Jo Youngberg, passed away on the 20th. She was 66 years old. Services will be held Saturday at 1 p.m. at West Center Chapel in lieu of flowers, memorials to feline friends in Nebraska or the Nebraska Humane Society. Zorko, William Zorko, passed away May 22nd. He was 96 and a veteran. In lieu of flowers, memorials may be directed to Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Gretna. Funeral services will be Saturday at 10 a.m. with visitation at 9 at Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Gretna. And lastly, Zwiebel, Harlan Zwiebel, age 83, passed away May 20th. His service will be Tuesday, May 28th at 10 a.m. at Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home in Lincoln. No viewing or visitation. Memorials have been suggested to FoodNet of Lincoln.
From the Lincoln Journal-Star, Kathleen Yackel, died January 29th. Kathleen was cremated at Rest Haven Funeral Home and will be laid to rest with a gravesite gathering at 2 p.m. on May 29th at Lincoln Memorial. Caves. Ralph Caves, age 93 of Lincoln, died May 18th. He was a World War II veteran serving in the United States Navy. Gravesite services will be at 2 p.m. Friday, May 24th at Lincoln Memorial Park. Please gather at Gate 2. No viewing or visitation. Memorials have been suggested to the Wounded Warriors Project. Faden. Carl C. Faden died on May 17th. No age was given. A celebration of life will be held from 1 to 4 p.m. Saturday, May 25th at Madonna Rehab Hospital in the Sharon Room. Hafner. Stuart Lee Hafner passed away on May 21st. He was 57 years old. The family will receive friends from 5 to 8 p.m. on Thursday, May 23rd at Lincoln Memorial. A Mass of Christian burial will be held at 9:30 a.m. on Friday, May 24th at the Cathedral of the Risen Christ. Noddings. Richard A. Noddings, age 66, of rural Wilbur, died February 28th in Lincoln. Memorial services will be at 10:30 a.m. on Wednesday, May 29th at Kunkel Funeral Home in Wilbur. Memorials to the DAV for Transportation Program. Zwiebel. Harlan Zwiebel, age 83 of Lincoln, died May 20th. Services will be at 10 a.m. Tuesday, May 28th at Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home in Lincoln. No viewing or visitation. Memorials have been suggested to FoodNet of Lincoln. Nolte. Jerry Nolte of Humboldt died on May 22nd. He was 84. No other information is available. Cronin. Robert Cronin, age 96 of Oyens, Iowa, died Tuesday, May 21st. Visitation with the family present will be after 4 p.m. Monday, May 27th at Rex Winkle Funeral Home in Lamars. There will be a Knights of Columbus Rosary at 5 p.m. and a scriptural prayer service at 7 p.m. Listeners' memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and go a long way to keeping Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as Donor's Choice or your favorite charity. Donations should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska, 68152. Thank you for being a Radio Talking Book listener and supporter, and we will be back after this short message.
You're listening to the studios of Radio Talking Book in Omaha, Nebraska. The Radio Talking Book
You want to start
Network is
the,
brought to you with the cooperation of KIOS
opinion?
FM in
Sure.
Omaha and statewide
I'll
through the facilities
be doing
of
mobs
NET
are ruining
Radio
storm chasing.
Television. We're proud to serve our blind and visually impaired listeners for over 44 years. Thank you for being a loyal Radio Talking Book listener and supporter. And now I want to toss this over to my friend Jane with a look at the senior lunch menu.
Happy Friday! It is May 24th and the beginning of the Memorial Day weekend. Your Meals on Wheels menu is sweet and sour chicken breast, brown rice pilaf, oriental blend vegetables, an egg roll, cinnamon raisin bread with margarine, fruit cocktail, and 1% milk. Please remember that Monday, May 27th is Memorial Day, and there is no Meals on Wheels menu. The holiday meal is by reservation only.
reading of the Omaha World Herald and Lincoln Journal-Star are brought to you by WellCare Health Plans, proudly focused exclusively on providing government-sponsored, managed care services through Medicaid and Medicare prescription drug plans to families, children, and seniors in Nebraska. For more about WellCare, call today at 1-888-255-2605 or visit www.wellcare.com/Nebraska. Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We're at about the halfway point of our broadcast for this morning. And with that, I want to thank our readers, Rick Miner and Deanne Bright. They will be back momentarily to continue reading from the Omaha World Herald and the Lincoln Journal-Star. But since, they're in need of a much-deserved break, I'm going to give them all the time they need and help everyone at the same time by reading the current weather conditions and projected forecast for the Omaha metro area this Friday, May 24th, through this coming Thursday, May 30th. And according to the National Weather Service, it is 68 degrees at Omaha's Epley Airfield under overcast skies. The humidity stands at 84% with the dew point at 63 degrees. Today, we should expect mostly cloudy skies with a high near 80. Come tonight, it'll be only partly cloudy with a low around 61. Come tomorrow is a different story with a 50% chance of showers and thunderstorms, mainly after 1 p.m. Apart from that, Saturday will be partly sunny with a high near 81. It says here that new rainfall amounts of less than 1/10 of an inch are possible, except higher amounts during thunderstorms. Sunday, a 20% chance of showers and thunderstorms is expected. And again, this will be relatively partly sunny skies. The high for your Sunday will be 81 degrees. Now, Memorial Day looks rather interesting. It says here that come Monday, expect showers and thunderstorms, mainly before 1 p.m. It'll be mostly cloudy like today, with a high near 82. It says here that the chance of precipitation come Memorial Day is 60%. Tuesday, yet again, a chance of showers and thunderstorms, mainly after 1 p.m.
I'm ready for some
Again,
hot
partly
weather.
sunny skies. Apart from this, with a high near 76. Here we go. Come Wednesday, we get a little reprieve with mostly sunny conditions and a high near 74. And to cap things off on a good omen on Thursday, May 30th, expect sunny skies in the Omaha metro area with a high near 76. All things considered, not too bad. But I know a lot of people out west from here really don't need any more precipitation. But since I see our readers have returned to the booth, I really don't want to eat up too much of their time. So I'm going to toss this baton over to my friends, Rick and Deanne. So, guys, let's do what you do best.
All right, I'm Deanne Bright, reading from the Omaha World Herald, and we are now working on editorials and commentary. I had heard grumblings about the downsides to storm chasing for a long time: poor driving habits, traffic jams as cars converge near violent storms, and the dangers of rogue chasers and hobbyists. It had always been on my mind, but 4 years of venturing to the plains had taught me it was just something I would have to live with. I always brushed it off as an unavoidable byproduct of chasing. But Monday was different. I witnessed firsthand the practices that will drive me away from the sport I once loved with my entire being. The past week of storm chasing has been eye-opening. In just 7 days, I've encountered chase vehicles parked perpendicular to roads blocking major intersections, multiple chasers with red-blue police lights pulling over others to clear their path to the storm. Now, in 70-mile-per-hour winds and egg-sized hail and less than a mile from a tornado, this could have been deadly. Traffic jams 200 cars deep. Chasers parking in the road to take pictures, blocking traffic. Chasers barreling down a one-lane road at 90 miles an hour. Chasers driving on the wrong side of the road. The dangers speak for themselves. There's a reason why my biggest fear about storm chasing is not weather-related. It's not the softball-sized hail. It's not hurricane-force winds. It's not even lightning or the tornado itself. It's other chasers. On Monday, when a large tornado passed it by Magnum, Oklahoma, The Oklahoma Highway Patrol reported just one injury, not from wind, but involving 2 vehicles with storm chasers. The perils have been manifest before. 3 storm chasers were killed in an accident in Texas in 2017 when the pair of Weather Channel contractors blew through a stop sign at 70 miles an hour. In 2013, veteran storm chaser Tim Samaras fell victim to a tornado near El Reno, Oklahoma. His son Paul and chase partner Carl Young also perished. Weather Channel vehicle was tossed 200 yards, breaking the driver's neck. Scores of other chasers cheated death that day, but so far, the storm chase community has been incredibly lucky. On its current track, storm chasing is a ticking time bomb. It's only a matter of time before a major catastrophe occurs, with many more fatalities. Chaser-clogged roads and an erratically moving tornado are a recipe for disaster. It's not a matter of if, it's when. Much of the problem stems from the sheer number of chasers on the road. Back in the 70s and 80s, there were only a handful out there, and they were generally trained atmospheric scientists who understood the dynamics of what they were dealing with. But by the mid-2000s, ushered in an era of do-it-yourself storm chasing. Popular TV shows, such as Discovery Channel's Storm Chasers, and the advent of smartphones spurred many to think, hey, I can do this. And in many cases, they can, but in my opinion, they should not. It's easy to turn on the TV and see a severe weather risk area plastered on a map. Driving to it is simple, and nowadays high-resolution computer models are made available to the public online. The sheer amount of information out there gives the tools of the trade to anybody, but that does not mean they know how to use it. Storm behaviors change. Cell service drops out. The computer models are often shaky at best. Today's homegrown storm chasers may have what they need to get by 99% of the time. It's easy to know what to do when things go right, but it's only a matter of time before things go wrong. It's not just amateurs contributing to this chasing turning point. Professional storm chasers, too, are only making it worse. With stiffer competition and more of it, many are taking to the extreme to get the best, most close-up footage. This often means taking unnecessary risks and putting others at risk as well. Yet time and time again, it's gobbled up by the public, encouraging this bad behavior further. Branding things as extreme gets clicks and views. That makes money. Across the board, we're much more likely to celebrate an extreme storm chaser than we would be a safe storm chaser. You're not going to turn on the TV and see a headline that reads, "Storm chaser records tornado from a safe distance." It's part of a larger cultural issue that is in the process of redefining storm chasing. For many, the practice we fell in love with simply does not exist anymore. And with big profits on the line, the dangerous behavior will only get worse. Illegal driving won't be policed by law enforcement. They're busy doing severe weather. And there's no real way to practically limit the number of storm chasers or tourists that venture out.
From the editorial writers of the Lincoln Journal-Star, another year, another failure for tax reform. The threat of a petition drive to place a constitutional amendment on the 2010 ballot was designed to spur the Nebraska legislature to enact meaningful property tax reform. Then the measure suddenly collapsed when its primary sponsor withdrew, citing a lack of funds and dim prospects for success. Just as quickly, a second group revived the measure, saying that it had taken the reins and was collecting signatures. This kind of shakeup typifies the road Nebraska has traveled on taxes, lots of wheels spinning, little traction in recent years. As senators approach the conclusion of this year's 90-day session next week, progress on tax reform, the defining topic of the 106th legislature, has again failed to materialize. Every year that passes without resolution tightens the clamp on Nebraskans, particularly farmers and ranchers, squeezed harder by declining incomes amid an increasing tax burden. Hence the need for resolution that still won't come. On its face, the problem is simple. The formula governing state aid is sending money to far fewer schools, with more than 70% receiving no equalization aid this year. Accordingly, property owners are increasingly carrying the portion of the burden for K through 12 education that should be shouldered by the state. If the solution were as easy, though, lawmakers would have found it many moons ago. Our preference has long been revenue-neutral reform that rebalances the three-legged stool of taxation. Its base is dangerously wobbly, with property taxes now representing 44.4% of all taxes collected in Nebraska, compared to 29.5% for income and 26.1% for sales in FY 2017 and 18, per the Legislative Fiscal Office. Those figures underscore the inequity of the current situation and need for reform. Yet another year came and went without fixing this predicament and accomplishing major change in a 60-day legislative session in an election year is unlikely. Further complicating matters is the rigidity of lawmakers. To a person, every senator appears to consider property tax reform imperative, yet the unwillingness of many to give an inch on exactly how to fund consequential relief killed this year's proposals. Nebraskans now must wait until at least 2020, where that game-changing petition looms, before such legislation can be passed, if at all. It is unclear whether the change of ownership of the petition, which would create a state income tax credit equal to 35% of local property taxes paid, affected its viability. Regardless, the hope was that lawmakers would enact significant reforms to head off a ballot item that would blow such a large hole in the state budget before it reached voters. But lawmakers have sidestepped tax reform once again. That inaction has a cost, one their constituents will no doubt share in the full throat during the interim.
The following letters to the editor appear in the Public Pulse. George Mills of Omaha writes, Nebraska law allows school districts to issue bonds for new construction and capital improvements, subject to voter approval. How is Douglas County's request to issue bonds for a large construction project for the benefit of youth any different? I think it's fairly obvious Douglas County board members are fearful that voters will reject their plan. So, in order to circumvent a rejection, they created a private nonprofit to make the decision, thus usurping the rights of voters. In addition, 2 members of the 5-member new nonprofit were also members of the Douglas County Board, at least one a proponent of the building project. What they are doing is wrong. They should allow the people the right to vote on this important issue. Lou Titilis of Kimballton, Iowa writes, by now we should realize that a pattern is emerging with the recent spy allegations against China's Huai Levenvo and even Chinese-made drones. China is using free trade with nearly slave labor to build up its military and spread its control over Western free nations. The way to stop this is to simply avoid buying Chinese-made products. Rather, we should buy from others, or maybe we should try to make it ourselves. Gee, what a novel idea. Jerry Hansen of Omaha writes, reading the May 11th Pulse, I, and I'm sure many others, would agree with Russell Fulton. Tear down the old Crossroads Mall and build a casino. Think of all the money the city would have to keep our streets drivable. In addition to building a casino in the old Crossroads, there could be food and several floors where seniors could live. In the winter, they could do all of their shopping without going out in the cold and snow. This would help many seniors who don't drive. And Jacob Garza of Omaha writes, I think people need to worry more about the environment. If we don't make a change now, animals will be in danger and our waters will be ruined. All this could be helped if we would just recycle.
And from the letters to the editor to the Lincoln paper, Lori Clark of Lincoln writes, Omaha Senator Justin Wayne and the Nebraska Farm Bureau want to legalize industrial hemp by passing LB 657, the Nebraska Hemp Farming Act. These folks aren't, or are they, making the very critical connection that hemp is a variety of the cannabis plant and that marijuana outside of Drug Enforcement Agency and Food and Drug Administration control is dangerous to our children, youth, and families. If LB 657 doesn't die this session or incur a veto, thus giving anti-drug people more opportunity to educate before our next legislation session, then why fight marijuana at all? If the door opens to hemp, the door is open to recreational marijuana. Marijuana advocates know this. As Sam O'Connor, president of the North Carolina State University chapter of National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, told the student newspaper there, industrial hemp is usually first, then medical marijuana, and then recreational. If our legislature legalizes hemp, it's just a matter of time before the full legalization of marijuana. I hope our legislators and governor will just say no to legalizing hemp and marijuana. If they won't say no, then how can they expect our children to? I'm very proud to be a Cornhusker. Nebraska is the good life, and I oppose the recent move toward becoming hemp huskers. And Marilyn Bronsroth of Denton writes, Christians' Bible at odds on abortion. The Bible reports that John the Baptist, at 6 months in the womb of his mother Elizabeth, leaped for joy when Mary, the mother of Jesus, approached them. This was because John felt the presence of the baby Jesus in the womb of Mary, whose human aging factors had begun a few days previously with his conception by the Holy Spirit. The Bible must be wrong, as our population, which holds a Christian majority, has given Democrats the political authority to fight to keep abortion legal. They know life begins at birth. So who is mainly responsible for this confusion? The truth is, it's the leadership within the Christian churches that fails to report when human life begins. This basically makes the Bible reports a lie. Keep in mind that abortion violates both church and state. The practice destroys Christian doctrine, and murder, of course, is the state's worst violation, as abortion kills a human life, which again the Bible reports.
What if no one answered the call? This article by Gerald M. Stillmock, the writer of Syracuse, Nebraska, is a lobbyist for the Nebraska State Volunteer Firefighters Association and Nebraska Fire Chiefs Association. Volunteer firefighters and volunteer emergency medical personnel are told during their recruitment interviews and quickly realize when they begin their service that they are on call 24 hours a day. They respond to emergencies during frigid winter conditions, blistering summer heat, and work hours, whether that is at their employer's place of business or trying to make ends meet as a sole proprietor of a small business. Nebraska communities served by these volunteers depend on them to be their first line of defense for many types of emergencies. This was certainly true this winter and early spring. Blizzard conditions during February along I-80 near York resulted in multiple vehicle accidents. The York and Waco fire departments, among others, were dispatched throughout that day. 2 of the Waco Volunteer Fire Department vehicles were struck by traffic on the interstate, resulting in injuries to 4 of the 6 volunteer first responders. The mid-March blizzards and flooding across the state pushed volunteers and some first responders from career fire departments into perilous situations that most of us experience only while watching a movie or reading of the heroic activities of first responders. Nebraska's volunteer firefighters and volunteer emergency medical personnel answer the call when the page goes out, summoning them to drop everything they are doing and in an instant leave their ordinary lives to become the extraordinary people Nebraskans have relied upon for decades. The combined mid-March blizzards and flooding pushed the volunteers out of the safety of their own homes to respond to the emergencies, remain on the scene, and provide life-saving rescues across the state. Many did so repeatedly without sufficient rest or food and while sacrificing time and income from their employment. Volunteer firefighters and volunteer emergency medical responders are tough enough and selfless enough to put in a full day's work and then be ready for more. First responders run towards danger, not away. But what if no one answered the call? That's a scary thought, isn't it? For volunteer fire and emergency medical services, keeping the department strong is a struggle. They face so much responsibility, so much training, and so much time away from family. All of these burdens are accepted by those who become volunteers. Volunteer first responders have served their local communities for decades at only a fraction of the cost to the taxpayers which would have resulted from implementing a system of paid fire departments and paid emergency medical services. Most cities, villages, and rural areas cannot afford to maintain their current level of fire protection and emergency medical services without a local pool of committed and dedicated volunteer first responders. Many first responders join as volunteers to give back to their community. Some serve because their family members before them started the tradition. Volunteer first responders serve proudly in their communities. However, state and local government officials must continue to recognize that additional work is needed to make sure all portions of Nebraska receive emergency public safety services. We must never learn the answer to the question, what if no one answers the call?
Moving on to the lighter side of news, how to keep your home from turning into a money pit. Taking these steps can save you big money down the line. The fastest way to turn your home into a money pit? Neglecting it. Ignoring routine household maintenance can cause damage to your home and even create dangerous living conditions down the road. The good news is spending a little money on upkeep here and there will help you avoid the need for pricey repairs. Get a jump on these tasks to keep your home in the best shape possible. Number 1, check your monitors. Testing your smoke alarms and carbon monoxide monitors is one of the most important home maintenance tasks you can perform. After all, working monitors don't just prevent costly fire damage, they can also save your life. According to the U.S. Fire Administration, you should test your smoke alarm once a month using the test button and replace the unit every 10 years. Number 2, test your sump pump. Sump pumps are useful for keeping groundwater out of your basement. They move water away from your foundation and prevent flooding. Number 3, maintain your HVAC system. Staying on top of the HVAC maintenance will ensure that your unit is running smoothly and efficiently. Be sure to replace the filter every 2 to 3 months or per your manufacturer's instructions. Also, it's important to have a professional service that unit once a year. They can perform routine checks of the equipment, test the efficiency of your model, and adjust your HVAC according to your needs. And finally, clean your gutters regularly. Gutter cleaning prevents roof leaks, and neglecting this necessary task can bring about serious home damage and a host of big repair bills. Leaks can result in mold-flooded basements and cracked foundations, all of which can be avoided when you hire a pro to clean your gutters at least twice a year. If you have pine trees, you may need to have your gutters cleaned more often.
The following is a review of the film Aladdin by Mark Kennedy with the Associated Press. It's pretty clear after watching the new live-action Aladdin that doubts about Will Smith's casting as the genie were overblown. It's the guy behind the camera who should be doubted and stuffed into a small lamp forever. Guy Ritchie, that lover of gritty gangster and violent action, was always an odd choice to helm a big Disney romantic musical, and proves utterly the wrong guy here. Aladdin, in his hands, is more like the Mummy than Frozen. This is an Aladdin with a torture scene and pointlessly artful, fast, slow-motion action scenes. Going into it, Smith was the question mark. How can you possibly have a real actor play the shape-shifting, manic spirit that Robin Williams so wonderfully voiced in the animated film? Smith struggles at work at first, perhaps before listening to his own character's advice, be yourself. Ritchie, who directs and his co-writer alongside John August, was basically taken the 1992 film structure, added elements from the Broadway musical, and made some nice script tweaks, most impressively by adding a second love story and updating Princess Jasmine from pretty eyewitness to fierce participant. The script also doubles down on the notion that everyone seems trapped in the roles they were born into. Mena Massoud gamely plays the title character, a street urchin with good hair, who falls for the free-spirited princess and has his life changed with one rub of a magic lamp. Naomi Scott is the princess, and she is a worthy Disney heroine. The key Alan Menken melodies from the original film, including Friend Like Me, Prince Ali, and A Whole New World, are all here, as well as Speechless, a new song written by Menken and Benj Pasek and Justin Paul, performed by Jasmine. It's terrific and may finally replace Let It Go as the go-to Disney anthem. The film's lurch from one direction to the next is capped off by a disastrous remix of Friend Like Me that plays over the end credits, with Will Smith resurrecting his 90s friendly rapper while DJ Khaled keeps screaming another one. Again, Menken, Pasek, and Paul, some of our greatest theatrical songwriters, are on deck here. It's the last of many clumsy touches, but not in a charming way.
And from the Ask Amy column. Dear Amy, my grandnephew is being bar mitzvahed next month. His father, who runs youth programs for the local Jewish community center and has never before displayed ultra-Orthodox tendencies, has decided to hold the ceremonies in a Shabbat synagogue in which men and women are not allowed to sit together. I refuse to attend this ceremony, which I consider medieval and sexist in nature. My wife, it's her side of the family, knows how I feel and is okay with my choice, but will attend the ceremony nevertheless. Quite honestly, I am really disappointed in her decision. There are other less rigid synagogues in the area, and I would gladly attend services at them, but this is what my nephew has chosen. I'd like to tell the family how I feel and encourage them to boycott the ceremony as well. I know this is drastic and practically uncalled for, but I truly feel that attending means approval of these reactionary practices. Should I encourage my wife not to attend? Should I notify the rest of the family? Disgusted husband. Dear Disgusted, you are completely within your rights to stay home from a religious ceremony you consider medieval and sexist in nature. And now I wonder, who put you in charge of the rest of the family? You are obviously infuriated by the parents' choice to hold this religious ceremony in an ultra-Orthodox venue. The boy's father, who it seems is already deeply involved in the Jewish community, may be moving toward a more conservative faith practice. Do you expect to disrupt his journey toward the ultra-Orthodox through your own tough judgment? Could you exert enough pressure to get this branchy rear Weiss family to change? No, you could not. I appreciate your concern about the position of women in this particular faith community, but I have news for you. My own perspective is that many Orthodox religious practices and/or closed faith-based communities such as the Chabad, Amish, Mormon, Orthodox Christian, Muslim, and others are deeply sexist in nature, if not always on the surface. And I say this as an active, if occasionally infuriated Methodist. Furthermore, your desire to control your wife is, well, let's call it ironic. Stay home if you want. Control your own impulse to control other people. And, dear Amy, I am in my early 30s and I have a great career at home. I am single and live my life to my wants and needs. I've never had jealous tendencies. There is an old friend I have grown from my grammar school days who is engaged and recently purchased a home with her fiancé. We do not socialize anymore in person. I do not harbor ill will toward her despite my low opinion of her. She was the type of person who always had to one-up your story or have something better than what you had. She cut corners in school and put more time in controlling how others perceived her. She posted photos of the home along with the square footage in the description. The recent posting of her new mansion has me green with envy. I'm disappointed in myself. I do not know why I feel this way, but I cannot shake the feeling. When I mentioned this to someone, they pointed out that because I feel this way, I must not be happy with my life. The truth is, I am very happy. I know what people post on social media is always the prettier version of life's reality, but I cannot shake this jealousy. Do you have any words of wisdom or advice on how to deflect this type of feeling? Does being jealous mean you're not happy? Signed, Green with Envy. Dear Green, according to you, your hometown pal has always trafficked in one-upsmanship. She is still doing it, and you're still letting her. You feel envy not because you're unhappy, but because you are human. I suggest that you eliminate these envy triggers, disengage from her on social media, and please learn to laugh about your own very human reaction.
The following is a review of the film Booksmart by Katie Walsh with the Tribune News Service. Olivia Wilde did not have to go this hard, but she did. For her directorial debut, Booksmart, the actress turned director, comes out swinging with not only one of the best movies of the year, but one of the best high school movies of all time. With a stacked supporting cast, a script crackling with densely packed jokes and bravura, awards-worthy comedic performances from star Beanie Feldstein of Booksmart more than earns its high marks and hype. Wilde's screen style is joyful, colorful, and rhythmic. It's simply exuberant. With Jason McCormick's cinematography and a thumping soundtrack by Dan the Automator, Booksmart creates an intoxicating energy that brings to life the script by a crack team of female writers, Emily Hartpan, Sarah Haskins, Suzanne Fogel, and Katie Silberman. The story is a familiar tale, told with two contemporary perspectives and aching specificity. A pair of less than popular teenage pals decide they want to enjoy one night of high school hedonism before graduation. Think Can't Hardly Wait or Superbad, but this time the girls are the subjects, not the objects. Ruthlessly ambitious class president Molly Feldstein suffers an existential crisis on the last day of school when she realizes the classmates she considered burnouts have been accepted to elite colleges just as she has. Determined to not be the loser who only chose studying and school, she ropes her quieter, fiercely feminist, queer best friend, Amy, into changing their high school narratives by going to the last big party. They just have to find it first. Just getting to the party is a wild journey involving matching jumpsuits, a mega yacht, their Lyft driving principal, a murder mystery dinner, a brief detour for archival research, an encounter with a suspected murderer, and an accidental drug trip. Molly, on the hunt for a seminal fun anecdote, and ever the overachiever, earns a whole high school diploma's worth in a single night. Booksmart draws on the history of our memories of beloved teen movies while singularly challenging the genre, steamrolling outdated gender norms and heteronormativity with its brand of empowered, fluid, and open-minded notions of sexuality, self, and friendship. It feels familiar, but the entire moral axis and point of view has shifted to something much more modern and enlightened.
From Jan Blackstone's Ex-Etiquette column, Red Flags Over Godfather Surprise. Question. My girlfriend of 2 years has just told me that her ex is her son's godfather. They've been broken up for more than 5 years. I found out because he was present at her son's birthday party, and when I questioned her about it, everything came out. I was surprised because we've talked about our exes, and I know the birth father is not around, but she never mentioned this. Evidently, he's been the godfather since before I came into the picture. I feel betrayed, and I'm thinking we shouldn't go forward with our wedding plans. She says I'm overreacting and doesn't think it's a big deal. What's good ex-etiquette? Answer. Red flag time for both of you. First, yes, she should have told you. Why she didn't should be explored, but when things like this are omitted, it's usually fear-based, based on a desire to betray it. In other words, she was afraid or didn't want to deal with how you would react, so she withheld the information. That is unfortunate. To practice good ex-etiquette, you must be honest and straightforward at all times. However, more concerning than the lie by omission, X is the child's godfather, is the tendency to withhold information when faced with a possible disagreement, then diminish the importance of the lie when confronted. That will cause problems in the long run. That is what should be explored with a professional. Now your part. You have to ask yourself, what have you done over the past 2 years to give her the impression that her ex being her son's godfather would be a problem? As you mentioned, the choice was made before you came into the picture, so you have acted insecure. Jealous, overreacted to various incidents. Instead of dealing with these emotions together, it all may have been just swept under the rug. And then you have the situation you're in. Reading between the lines, it sounds like both of you have had a past with both exes. But it also sounds like you are ready to throw in the towel when confronted with an issue. Conflict doesn't have to be bad. Don't be afraid of it and run away. Embrace it and make this disagreement the catalyst for discussion and new understanding. Figure out how you will problem solve as a couple. This will be one of the many disagreements. Attaching blame, fault, betrayal, etc. to it will only make it more difficult to come to agreement. Finally, an ex being the godfather does present some unique problems. A godparent is responsible for a child's religious life and spiritual upbringing. In some cultures, though there is no legal precedent, a godparent becomes responsible for the child if something happens to the parents, and it's not customary to change godparents once they have been chosen. If a dad isn't in the picture, there will be a step-parent adoption. Will there be a step-parent adoption? You and Mom have some serious conversations ahead of you. Start talking. That's good ex-etiquette.
Wedding bells are in the future for actress Scarlett Johansson and Colin Jost of Saturday Night Live. Johansson's publicist told the AP that the private couple is officially engaged after 2 years of dating. No date has been set for the nuptials. Johansson, 34, was previously married to actor Ryan Reynolds and journalist Romain Duriac, with whom she has a daughter named Rose, who was born in 2014. This is the first marriage for the 36-year-old Jost, who is the co-anchor of SNL's Weekend Update. The couple recently walked the red carpet together at the premiere of Avengers Endgame.
Moving to business news, Nelnet's future includes solar. The theme for Nelnet's 2019 annual meeting was See Your Future, Be Your Future. That in part was a tribute to co-founder and former CEO Stephen Butterfield, who died unexpectedly last year. But it was also a nod to the fact that the future is bright for the Lincoln-based financial services company. Though, as Executive Chairman Mike Dunlap told the group at Thursday's gathering at the Courtyard by Marriott Hotel in the Haymarket, Nelnet remains predominantly a financial services company. It also wants to continue to diversify its revenue streams. The company projects it still has more than $2.1 billion in future revenue that will come from its portfolio of student loans. But it also continues to grow revenue from its fee-related businesses, bringing in more than $700 million last year, up from $500 million in 2017. One of these fee-based businesses is its Allo Communications subsidiary, which bleeds money right now but has a tremendous upside. Allo increased its revenue to $45 million in 2018, up from $26 million in 2017, as it added nearly 17,000 new customers. However, it still had a net loss of almost $29 million as it continues to spend heavily to build the business. That loss does not include capital costs, which totaled $87 million for Allo in 2018. Those costs should decrease significantly now that the build-out of its fiber network in Lincoln is mostly finished. Allo has been expanding elsewhere in Nebraska and in Colorado. It is providing service in Hastings and Fort Morgan, Colorado, and President Brad Moline said Thursday that the company has signed a lease to be the sole internet provider on the city-built fiber network. Nelnet also continues to make other investments outside its core businesses. Those include venture capital investments in startups and real estate investments in projects such as the Telegraph District and the recently announced Canopy Park housing development. The company spent $67 million on those two things, as well as new investment solar farms in 2018. Nelnet GEO Jeff Nordhoek said the company has not disclosed where it has invested in solar farms, although he did say none are in Nebraska. He also did not say how much of the $67 million went to solar project. Nordhoek said solar is an attractive investment for a number of reasons, including being environmentally friendly and tax efficient, and he expects Nelnet to continue to look at investing in the future.
President Donald Trump is delivering an additional $16 billion in aid to farmers hurt by his trade policies, an effort to relieve the economic pain among his supporters in rural America. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue said the first of 3 payments is likely to be made in July or August, and suggested that U.S. negotiators may be weeks away from settling a bitter trade dispute with China. The latest bailout comes atop an $11 billion in aid Trump provided farmers last year. Trump's seeking to reduce America's trade deficit with the rest of the world, and with China in particular, has imposed import taxes on foreign steel, aluminum, solar panels, and dishwashers, and on thousands of Chinese products. U.S. trading partners have lashed back with retaliatory tariffs of their own, focusing on agricultural products in a direct shot at the heartland, where support for Trump runs high. The package we're announcing today will ensure that farmers will not bear the brunt of those trade actions, Perdue said. Talks between the two nations broke off earlier this month with no resolution to a dispute over Beijing's aggressive efforts to challenge U.S. technological dominance. The U.S. charges that China is stealing technology, unfairly subsidizing its own companies, and forcing American companies to hand over trade secrets if they want access to Chinese markets. Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping are expected to discuss the standoff at a meeting of the group of 20 leading industrial nations in Osaka, Japan, next month. Nebraska and Iowa lawmakers have made clear that they and their constituents would rather have open markets than more government assistance, but they are also not turning down the aid in the meantime.
FAA discusses 737 MAX situation from Fort Worth. Representatives from more than 30 countries met with Federal Aviation Administration officials Thursday to hear the U.S. regulators' approach to determining how soon the Boeing 737 MAX can resume flying after 2 crashes that killed 346 people. Before the meeting, acting FAA Administrator Daniel Elwell declined to give a timetable for the plane's return. He hinted it could be several months, saying that even October, a later return than airlines expected, might not be realistic. The meeting is crucial to the U.S. agency's hopes of convincing other regulators around the world to lift their bans on the plane soon after the FAA does.
A new automatic lane change feature of Tesla's autopilot system does not work well and could be a safety risk to drivers, according to tests performed by Consumer Reports. The magazine and website tested Navigate on Autopilot and found it less competent than human driving, cutting off cars without leaving enough space. Senior Director of Auto Testing, Jake Fisher, said in a statement this week that the system does not appear to react to brake lights or turn signals, and it can't anticipate what other drivers will do. It's incredibly nearsighted, he said. You constantly have to be one step ahead of it. Consumer Reports says automakers should be required to make public validated evidence of a new system's safety before releasing it on public roads. The test tests raise more questions about the safety of Tesla's autopilot system, and CEO Elon Musk's statement that Tesla will have fully self-driving vehicles ready sometime next year. Last week, the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board said autopilot was in use in a March crash that killed a man in Delray Beach, Florida.
Moving on to sports, in Husker football, Nebraska O-line sees better days in store. Pieces falling into place with returning players still young. Over the course of the 2018 season, that must be considered a marked improvement for the Nebraska offensive line. Matt Farniok can think of moments that were downright fun. Take, for example, rushing for 383 yards and 4 touchdowns against Minnesota, en route to 659 total yards and 53 points, or 4 weeks later, when NU ran for 316 yards and 4 scores against Illinois, piling up 54 points and 606 total yards. For a group that spent at least the past season and a half feeling a sting of not living up to expectations, and then the frustration and pressure that came with an 0-6 start, the dam break most certainly felt rewarding. The first thing is, this works, because you have to break that first wall. So junior right tackle Matt Farniok, who helped anchor a group that jumped from number 112 nationally in 2017 to 16th in yards per carry and nearly doubled its number of rushing touchdowns to 25. The first half of the season, something would go wrong and the wheels would fall off the cart. Second half of the season, we started rolling, started making moves, and that was such a huge confidence boost. It also showed where Greg Austin's crew needs to continue to improve. We have to get bigger, we have to get stronger and faster, Farniok said. The games we lost were right there neck and neck, and we have to get that. That's what we're working on now, is finding that extra step so that instead of being almost there, we are there. Through the spring, NU's offensive line began the process of replacing departed two-time captain and left guard Gerald Foster and center Tanner Farmer. Sophomore walk-on Trent Hickson put a strong claim on the guard spot. Redshirt freshman Cameron Juergens may lead at the center position, but fellow redshirt freshmen Will Farniok and Al Forbes, plus sophomore Hunter Miller, could make it a race still. Despite having a young middle of the line, Matt Farniok believes strongly that the group is only going to get better. There is certainly room for improvement, as NU did allow 28 sacks last season, 4 more than in 2017, and in some key moments struggled in short yardage situations. Not only that, but the current group is trending toward featuring all underclassmen. Suddenly, Farniok and bookend left tackle Brendan James are, more or less, entering their 3rd season as starters. Right guard Bo Wilson stepped in ably and grew in comfort and ability as 2018 progressed. Foster and Farmer helped chart the transitional course. Head coach Scott Frost heaped praise on his first group of seniors for the work they did in helping establish culture and expectations. Now, though, the returning players and the trio of returning starters in particular are responsible for furthering the line the next 2 seasons. Matt Farniok, James, and Wilson, still young players themselves, will have the responsibility of bringing along not only Hickson, Juergens, and company, but also a touted group of incoming freshmen that includes tackles Bryce Benhart, Matthew Anderson, and Jimmy Fritsch, and guard Michael Lynn. The transition has happened fast, but at the same time you learn from the older guys as you go, Matt Farniok said. We know how to lead. They got the ball rolling, and all those senior guys, they were great guys, and they came to work ready. They kind of showed us the example of how to be a good O-lineman, how to be a great O-lineman, and the steps you have to take. It doesn't even feel like that big of a hole to fill because they did such a great job of mentoring us and getting us prepared to be self-motivators. While some position groups are very much in flux, the path is relatively clear in Austin's room. Nothing is set in stone in May, of course, and just because one group starts week 1 in 2019 doesn't mean it will be the same group in week 7, let alone into 2020. But it's a group that will be together for a long time. It's a group that has many of its pieces set and has a number of players added to the equation quickly. And in college baseball, Huskers and Hawkeyes play the waiting game. Both coaches agreed, so did the grounds crew at BTN. For a variety of reasons, Iowa and Nebraska would push their scheduled Thursday night baseball game into Friday morning. Inclement weather ultimately forced a postponement of the nightcap of the Big Ten tournament quadruple header. Instead of playing at 9 p.m. for a second straight day, the 5th-seeded Huskers will meet 8th-seeded Iowa in a winner's bracket game Friday morning at TD Ameritrade Park. I think common sense prevailed here, Nebraska coach Darren Erstad said. I'm very pleased with the decision. The other winner's bracket game in between Ohio State and Maryland was suspended by weather and will resume at 10 a.m. Friday, with OSU leading 3-2 and Maryland batting with 1 out in the bottom of the 8th inning. Nebraska-Iowa will begin roughly an hour after that contest ends. With thunderstorms expected in the area, none of the decision makers were convinced Nebraska and Iowa could play the game fully and safely Thursday. Erstad and Hawkeyes coach Rick Heller wanted to avoid their starting pitchers warming up, only sit through a lengthy delay and potentially not return. The other factor, both coaches said, was a more manageable window for fans to come watch. With the weather delay before Thursday's third game, Iowa-Nebraska would have pushed the limits of the tournament's 11 p.m. starting curfew. Instead, a Friday morning game to start a holiday weekend should provide a better setting for a game between border rivals. Left-hander Nate Fisher will start for Nebraska, while Iowa plans to stick with righty Grant Judkins. If there was any risk at all, it made no sense to start the game tonight, Heller said. Both Darren and I have said before that in the right circumstances, if we ever did play here, it should be a really fun atmosphere for both of our fans. Said Erstad, I don't know if vacation days have to be taken, but let's go. Get those vacation days taken. It would be an awesome environment. Whoever wins between the Hawkeyes and Huskers won't play again until 9 a.m. Saturday, with a chance to earn a spot in Sunday's title game. The loser turns around and faces Minnesota later Friday in an elimination tilt at 7:30 p.m. The circumstances are eerily similar to the 2017 tourney in Indiana, when weather also pushed Nebraska's winner's bracket game against Iowa to the next morning. The Hawkeyes won that contest 2-0 en route to a title, while NU was eliminated later in the evening. Fans who plan to attend the late game can use their Thursday tickets for the Friday makeup, regardless of whether they attended other Thursday action. The first regularly scheduled game between Michigan and Ohio State, Maryland loser, is still set for 3:30 p.m. Tickets for originally scheduled Friday games will be accepted beginning at 2 p.m. Both elimination contests finished Thursday before the first round of storms rolled through Omaha. Second-seeded Michigan walked off third-seeded Illinois 5-4, and fourth-seeded Minnesota bested top-seed Indiana 9-4. The Maryland-Ohio State began after a delay of 1 hour and 35 minutes. Erstad said that Nebraska has long since become numb to such circumstances. The team endured multiple delays, postponements, and cancellations early in the seasons. It's refreshing to have that mindset, Erstad said. You don't hear any complaining. They're just like, all right, here we go. And in the Big East tournament, Blue Jays start tourney with a victory after a late rally from Mason, Ohio. Creighton scored 3 times in the 8th and 9th innings to complete a 10-9 win in the opening round of the Big East tournament Thursday. The Blue Jays trailed nearly the entire way against a spunky Seton Hall squad, which hammered Conference Pitcher of the Year Mitch Reagan from the start and built an 8-4 lead after 7 innings. But Creighton recovered just in time, perhaps aided by a 58-minute weather delay in the 8th. Sophomore David Vilches hit a solo home run after play resumed. Then 4 batters later, junior Parker Upton drilled a 2-run shot to pull the Jays within 8-7. Seton Hall did add an insurance run in the 9th, but number 25 Creighton produced a last-at-bat rally. After a wild pitch moved 2 runners into scoring position, freshman Jared Wegner tied the game at 9-9 with a 2-out, 2-run single. Wegner stole second before sophomore Will Hannafin came through with the unconventional game winner. Hannafin hit a high chopper that Seton Hall's first baseman couldn't handle. The grounder bounced off his glove and skipped towards second base, but the charging shortstop accidentally overran the ricochet and couldn't dive back in time to stop the baseball from rolling toward the outfield grass. The ball never left the infield, yet Wagner was able to sprint past third and glide into home. The CU bench immediately emptied as the Jays celebrated along the first base line. It was their fourth win of the year when trailing after 8 innings. It's a crazy, crazy game, Creighton coach Ed Cerveas said on the Big East Digital Network. Seton Hall came out and kind of jumped on us early. We weren't ready to go out of the blocks. I thought they played an excellent game. It's too bad it ended on a fluke play like that. But at this time of the year, you take them and you move on to the next game. Creighton, the top seed and the league's regular season champion, will face number 3 seed St. John's in the tournament's second round at 5:30 p.m. Friday at Prasco Park. The winner moves on to Sunday's title game. The Jays were most certainly the favorite coming into the event. They'd won 5 in a row. They entered with a 10-1 record in May. They outscored Seton Hall 19-3 in a series sweep last month. But CU looked quite vulnerable Thursday. Reagan didn't make it through 5 innings in the first time since March. He gave up a season-high 10 hits and 7 earned runs in just 4.5 innings. A 2-run triple in the second inning and a 2-run homer in the fifth were the biggest blows. Creighton initially struggled to answer, going 1 for 13 with runners on base in the third through the 7th innings, but then came the weather delay. Cerveas said afterward that he spoke to the team about the increased pressure Seton Hall would feel to maintain its momentum. The Jays had a chance, he said, and they took advantage of it. Cerveas said he saw the demeanor of his team change in those late innings. The players had more energy. They showed more emotion. That's how we got the play, he said. I really believe when we play like that, we're a tough out. We're a tough team to beat. Hopefully we learn Thursday. The Jays remain in good shape to earn an at-large berth to an NCAA regional, but they've never won a Big East tournament championship, though that's the goal this weekend. And volleyball, Hvac helps U.S. to a 3-0 mark. Former Nebraska volleyball player Michaela Hvac started the match for the second time for the United States women's national volleyball team and helped the Americans defeat Bulgaria 25-20, 25-16, and 25-21 on Thursday in Rus, Bulgaria. The United States concluded the first week of the six-week FIVB Volleyball Nations League tournament with a 3-0 record. Next week, the Americans will travel to Italy and face a tougher set of matches against Serbia, Italy, and the Dominican Republic. Hvac, who graduated from Nebraska earlier this month, had 8 kills on a .333 hitting percentage, 2 blocks, and 1 ace served Thursday. Hvac will not be available to make the U.S. roster for week 2 of the tournament because she'll return to America for her wedding. Unfortunately, we will not be able to take Michaela Hvac with us, said U.S. coach Karch Kareli in news release. We were certainly excited to do that, but she has bigger and more important things to do as she is getting married a week from Saturday. The U.S. roster for week 2 will be announced later this week. And in NBA playoffs, Leonard and the Raptors upset the Bucks. From Milwaukee, Kawhi Leonard scored 35 points and the Toronto Raptors beat the Milwaukee Bucks 105-99 on Thursday night to take a 3-2 lead in the Eastern Conference Finals. Leonard showed no obvious signs of the leg soreness that bothered him the previous 2 games, hitting the 30-point mark for the 4th time in the series. He nailed 5 3-pointers, grabbed 7 rebounds, and dished out 9 assists. Fred VanVleet scored 21 points, hitting 7 threes. Kyle Lowry added 17 as the Raptors put themselves in position to advance to the NBA Finals for the first time. A victory at home Saturday would set up a matchup with 2-time defending champion Golden State. Giannis Antetokounmpo had 24 points for Milwaukee hours after being announced as a unanimous first-team All-NBA selection. And in Nebraska football again, Moose says Big Ten must find its way into the playoff again. Throughout the Big Ten meetings in Chicago last week, Bill Moose enjoyed the compliments he received from colleagues on hiring basketball coach Fred Hoiberg. Moose joked that he got a few worried looks too, like, uh-oh, Nebraska here bears watching, Moose said Wednesday in his office. The Big Ten has a healthy respect for Husker athletics at this point, Moose said, and he for the league. It's collegial that way, the general bond between schools and also athletic directors expressing a central concern as another football season approaches. How in the heck has the Big Ten champion been left out of the past 3 college football playoff brackets? on how in the heck can the league champion bust its way back into an event that, for multiple years, has been dominated by Alabama, Clemson, and Oklahoma. Moose offered a frank answer. The CFP should go on an 8-team framework that includes all Power 5 conference champions. But the current 4-team system doesn't expire until after the 2026 season, and several leagues, the SEC specifically, may see no reason for a change. That's why Moose said the CFP selection committee has to better follow its protocol to measure playoff-worthy teams. Last year, 2 SEC teams, Alabama and Georgia, finished ahead of Big Ten champion Ohio State in the final CFP standings. The Buckeyes lost 1 game, the Bulldogs lost 2. Ohio State won its conference title, Georgia lost to Alabama in the SEC title game. Then was beaten soundly by Texas in the Sugar Bowl, while OSU won the Rose Bowl. You're telling me the SEC has the strength of schedule when they only play 8 conference games and they have that cupcake game the week before the end of the season? I mean, come on, Moose said. Last season, Georgia played home games against Austin Peay, Massachusetts, and Middle Tennessee, beating those teams by an average of 53-11. Where's the leadership in the room? I'm not kicking anybody to the curb, but follow the outlines that we're all following when we dump the BCS. In each of the past 2 years, the Big Ten's primary voice on the committee, Ohio State Athletic Director Gene Smith, has had to recuse himself from final discussions because his team was involved in potentially making the playoff. Smith left the committee with 1 year remaining on his new appointment to focus on helping new Ohio State coach Ryan Day. Leave everybody in the room, Moose said. Geez, we're adults. We respect each other. I think that's ridiculous. Moose then compared recusal to 3rd graders voting for class president with their heads down. The Big Ten's initial representative, Wisconsin AD Barry Alvarez, served on 3 committees. Former Nebraska coach and AD Tom Osborne served on the first 2. The Big Ten made the playoff in every year in which they served. The Big Ten's new representative, Iowa Athletic Director Gary Barta, is as good as there is, Moose said. He's level-headed, he's got great experience, he's served on a lot of committees, he's well-respected, Moose said. I like him a lot, he'll represent us very well. Still, consider the combined representation for the ACC and the SEC on the 2019 committee. Florida Athletic Director Scott Strickland, Georgia Tech Athletic Director Todd Stansberry, Interim Texas A&M Athletic Director R.C. Slocum, former Arkansas and Clemson coach Ken Hatfield, and former Virginia Tech coach Frank Beamer. Moose favors a move to an 8-team playoff. Moose favors a move to an 8-team playoff. 5 Power 5 conference champions, the top group of 5 champion, plus 2 wild cards, with the first round being played on campus sites in December. Under those rules, the committee would be responsible for deciding the 2 wild cards in the best group of 5 team and seeding the 8 playoff contenders. Concerns about weather and academics are overblown, Moose said. The NFL conducts playoff games in bad weather, so does the FCS. I lived that, said Moose, once the AD at Montana. What's the big deal? On the matter of academics, Moose said it'd be rare that the same 4 teams would be traveling to campus sites each December. On the matter of academics, listen to critics, Moose said. If you think there'd be 120 programs that are going to miss finals, Moose said he thinks his view on the 8-team playoff is shared by a majority of Big Ten ADs. He's not sure how quickly the sport will move to 8 teams, though. The first time somebody who thinks they should be there and has been there consistently isn't in there, it'll get revamped, Moose said. He declined to confirm if he was talking about Alabama, which has made the CFP all 5 years, including 2017, when the Crimson Tide didn't win their own division. Recently, SEC teams have embraced scheduling harder non-conference games, particularly Georgia, where Coach Kirby Smart has said he'd prefer nothing but Power 5 opponents, seemingly in anticipation of a playoff expansion after 2026. Georgia has Texas, Florida State, and Georgia Tech on its 2028 schedule, and Texas, Clemson, and Georgia Tech on its 2029 schedule. In an interview with CBS Sports, Georgia Athletic Director Greg McGarity said the school was scheduling tougher to impress prospective selection committee members in the future. If I'm sitting in the room and I'm a selection committee member, I'm going to value who you played and how did you schedule up, McGarity said. Big Ten Commissioner Jim Delaney thought the same when he unveiled a scheduling model years ago that included 9 league games starting in 2016 and 0 games against FCS opponents. The Big Ten has since backed off any suggested mandate against the FCS games, and NU has South Dakota in 2020 and North Dakota in 2022. Moose prioritizes a Big Ten title win, one of those, he said, and the rest should take care of itself. An 8-team playoff would take care of it for certain. Win the Big Ten and you'll be just fine for the postseason if we can get the CFP straightened out. Well, it's 12 o'clock, time to end the program. This is Rick Miner wishing you a happy weekend, and remember, it will get warmer eventually.
And I'm Deanne Bright. Have a wonderful week.
You're listening to the studios of Radio